Hello again, thank you for joining me. Good to have you here. I hope you had a great Easter and I hope your spring is going well. So today what I want to do is show you one of my absolute favorite tools that I use as an artist. And when I'm teaching, I use it virtually every day. So any of my students watching, you probably know what it is. So ready for the big reveal? Drum roll please. Yep, it is just the humble proportion wheel. So join me at my desk and I'll show you how I use it. Here we are at the drawing desk and I want to show you one of the ways that the proportion wheel can be helpful. So every time I have a student that brings a photo, we may have a standard size canvas or paper we're trying to work with, and so many times they'll bring me a photograph, which might be a great photograph, but proportionally it won't fit in the canvas or on the paper. So let's say we wanted to do a 16 by 20 inch painting of this. Well, how do we know if all that is going to fit on there? I can tell you right now it's not proportional to a 16 by 20. So if you took a 16 by 20 canvas and shrunk it down to where the width was the same as what this photo is, you're going to lose some on the top and bottom. So I like to use the proportion wheel to find out exactly how much of my source I can fit in my canvas, or maybe if I want to go custom, what size paper or canvas do I need to get everything in the composition. So what I do is I measure, and I'll use my ruler here because I think the numbers show up pretty good. So the actual image size is 10 3/4 inches. So actual image, sorry for that squeaking, so 10 3/4 inches high. And then the width is 7. So we have 7 inches wide. Okay, now we can grab our proportion wheel. Now if you look at the proportion wheel, you'll see there's an outside wheel and then an inside wheel. And both of them have inch markings on them. So on the inside, it starts from 1 and goes all the way up to about 100. And then same on the outside, start from 1, go all the way around to 100. There's also a percentage window on the inside of the proportion wheel. So what you do with this, let's say we were just going to go and make a custom size paper or canvas. So what I want to do is, the inside wheel is my original size, and so I take my 10 3/4 inches. You have to sometimes get your glasses on to see these little markings, but 10 3/4 is right about here. And then I'll match that up. Let's say I want to make that, let's say I want to make that 20 high. So what I do is I spin that inside wheel, just like the Wheel of Fortune, until 10 3/4 on the inside matches up with 20 inches on the outside. So 10 3/4 is my original size, 20 is what I want it to be. And then remember, we're trying to keep things proportional here. That's why it's the proportional wheel, proportional scale. So now 10 3/4 equals 20. And then I look over on the inside wheel to 7. What does 7 line up with? And that lines up with 13. So if I wanted to enlarge this, and you can play with this, you can make it larger or smaller than that. But if I wanted to just enlarge this straight up and make this size 20, then the width would be 13. And that would give me a proportional size. So here you see I measured the image. This is my actual image size. And then I used the proportion wheel. I lined 10 3/4 up with 20. I just decided that I could make it 25, I could make it 30, I could make it 8, I could make it whatever I wanted. So I can increase the size and reduce the size. So here, original size 10 3/4 inches by 7 inches. I decided I wanted the height to go to 20 inches. Then I just looked over at 7 inches on that inside wheel, and that brought me to 13 inches. So that's what you do if you wanted to just enlarge your image and keep it the same size as it is. But what if we wanted to fit this inside a 16 by 20 inch canvas? So here, once again, I crossed this out, but our height is 10 3/4 inches. And our height is 7 inches. Or, I'm sorry, our width is 7 inches. So if we want this to fit into a 16 by 20, so the highest measurement would be 20, and then we want the width to be 16, but we have to see how much of this will fit proportionally. So basically the same idea. I'll take my 10 3/4. I usually try to go with the longest dimension, or whatever is longer, the height or the width. I'll start with that. So I match my 10 3/4 up with my 20 inches, and it's still there. And now, instead of just seeing what the width would be proportionally, I look over to 16 inches. And that takes me to about 8.5 inches. So if I wanted to keep all of this height and keep it proportional and fit it in a 16 by 20, I would have to actually add 1.5 inches, so about 3/4 inches on each side, left and right, and that then would fill out the 16 by 20. I think I misspoke in the beginning. I think I said would probably have to chop off the top. Sometimes you may have to add on the sides. So let's do that again, but let's start by matching 7 inches with 16. So I'll take 7 inches, I'll just scoot that over to 16. And now I look over at 20, and I see how much of this image can I fit in proportionally. So 7 lines up with 16, 7 is our width. And then 20 is how high we want the canvas to be. And if we keep that proportional, where we're just keeping the width what's in here, then we would only have about 8 3/4 inches to work with height-wise. You might have to watch this a couple times. I know it can get confusing. It's really not difficult to use the proportion wheel. It just takes a little bit of practice, and really it does all the math for you. So what did I say here? The height would be 8 3/4. So let's get rid of that. We're keeping our 7-inch width here, and we're seeing if we scale this width up to 16 inches, then how much of this can we fit? And we found, using the proportion wheel, we only have 8 3/4 inches. So remember, right now this is 10 3/4. So we're going to have to get rid of 2 inches of space there. So if we keep this proportional, we'll only have that 8 3/4 inches to work with. So you have to decide what is a good crop. I don't want to crop off the top of his head. I don't want to crop off too much down here. So I'd say I would probably keep it right about here. Oops. The tape measure is really not the best tool for this, but because it shows up better on camera, that's why I am suffering for you. So 8 3/4 here. And then you can measure from the top and see, okay, how much is left. That's about 1 inch. So I could start 1 inch down over here, and then just go 8 3/4 again. And then you can just draw a line across from side to side, or fold that under, and that will give you the actual height that would fit in a 16 by 20 if we kept all the width here. If we used all the height, remember, we'd have to add about 3/4 of an inch on both sides. So that's another way we can use the proportion wheel. We can use it to see how big our paper or canvas would be if we used all this image, or we can see how much of the image will actually fit in to our existing canvas or paper. Another very common use for the proportion wheel is enlarging our sketch or reducing the size of our sketch. So let's say we have our pencil sketch here. Maybe we're doing a study and we like it, but we want to enlarge it and fit it onto a canvas. So we can use the proportion wheel and figure out how much to enlarge this on a photocopier so that we can then transfer our drawing to a canvas or a board or a piece of paper. So let's see how we can use the proportion wheel to do that. So same as before, we want to measure our sketch and then we'll take that over to the proportion wheel. So let's say I want to keep about this much of that sketch. So about 3 3/4 inches. It's always helpful to write down your measurements because I guarantee, I know I forget them and you may as well. So let's say our sketch is a height of 3 3/4 inches. At least that's how much I want to keep. And then let's keep the width maybe about 6 inches. So the width equals 6 inches. Then we go back over to our handy dandy proportion wheel. So what I like to do is I keep in mind what our standard size is anytime I'm trying to enlarge or reduce something, because honestly it's easier to find standard size frames, standard size canvases and mats and things like that. It's perfectly fine to go custom, but you're usually going to have to spend more money when you frame. So I have in mind a list of just the standard sizes, and that helps me choose what size I want to make my paintings and my drawings. I'll put in here a slide of some very common sizes here in the US. Alright, so with that in mind, let's hunt around here and try to find a standard size. So height is 3 3/4, width is 6. So on the inside here, let's go to 6 inches. And I'll scoot that over to 14 because 14 by 11 is a very standard size. But let's see where 3 3/4 ends up. 3 3/4 actually ends up closer to 8 3/4, so that wouldn't be standard. I can also alter how much I want to put in my image. So let's put 3 3/4 on 11. And then we'll look back over. So here I match up 3 3/4 inches with 11. And then I look over at 6 inches. I see, no, that's close to 18, about 17 3/4. So that would actually be quite a wide image. Let's see if we keep 3 3/4 at 11, what lines up with 14 inches. And it looks like 4 3/4. So let's see if we could fit that little piggy in 4 3/4. I bet we could. Be a little bit tighter. 4 3/4, yeah, even that looks pretty comfortable. So let's say not there, but here to here and here to here. That would be proportional to an 11 by 14. So that helps us a little bit, but what if I wanted to enlarge this on a photocopier rather than having to completely redraw what I've already drawn? That's where this center window really helps. So once again, I've lined up 3 3/4 with 11 inches, because 3 3/4 is my height here. And then I see over to 14, because I want to make this 11 by 14. What would that leave me on the sketch here? That would leave me 4 3/4, so that's where I put these marks. And so what if I wanted to enlarge this to that 11 by 14? Well, since I've already got it lined up with 11 by 14 here, then all I need to do is look inside this window and once again get your magnifying glass out. So it would be about 295%. And I know for a lot of you fancy people, you can just put this in Photoshop, enlarge it, and then print it out. But I really like using the photocopier. We have a good one at my school, and honestly, I think it's quicker just to run off a photocopy. So there, if I wanted to enlarge this big enough to put onto an 11 by 14 canvas, I would have to enlarge it to 295%. And usually on the photocopiers, they'll have that option for you to enlarge or reduce. You just have to look around for it a little bit. Okay, I just want to show you one more way that we can use the proportion wheel. So I showed you how on my small sketch I can use the proportion wheel to show me how much to enlarge it to whatever size I want. And now I'll show you, it just works the same but reverse. If I have a larger sketch, let's say I wanted to fit this on a smaller canvas. So this is a sketch I did for a 24 by 36 inch painting. Let me double check, I don't know if this will even fit in there. So, or maybe it was 24 by 30, yeah, that's what it was. So entire image size is 24 by 30. Let's write that down. 24 high, 30 wide. And let's go back to our handy dandy proportion wheel. Okay, can you remember or have an idea of what we should do now? That's right, great job. We find our original size on the inside of the wheel. So it may be a large number, it may be a small number, but whatever your starting size is, that's what you find on the inside wheel. So we have 24 inches by 30 inches. And let's see if there's another standard size that we can find that would fit into. So let's try 16 by 20. So to test that, what I would do is I line up 24 inches right here with 16 inches. And then I see, where does 30? Ah, look at that. 30 inches lines right up with 20 inches. So that means a 24 by 30 is equal to a 16 by 20 proportionally. Obviously the 24 by 30 is larger, but if you were to reduce it, you could fit that into a 16 by 20 without losing any of your image. Now let's go back to our little percentage wheel. So let's say I had this big sketch, which I'd probably have to do multiple photocopies of to get down to a smaller size. Let's see what percentage we would need to copy this at. So it looks like about 66% is what we would have to enter into the photocopier to get this down to a 16 by 20. Okay, so if we go make this 16 by 20, which is proportional, that will work. We'll be able to keep all that information. Then we would have to photocopy it at 66%. Okay, so I hope that helped you. Once again, it may look kind of like a boring tool, but this saves me so much time and really helps me fit things in my composition and make sure that I'm not going to run out of space or have too much space on my paper or my canvas. Thanks again for visiting me. Hope you have a great day, and I'll catch you next time.